never, ever be afraid to fail. And a lot of my life story is about failure. Way more of my life story is about failure than it is about success. Like, if you have one success at the end, it's pretty much payback for all the failures.
The first part of your career sounded horrendously miserable and painful. Talk to us about some of those painful failures in the early days and how you ended up, probably especially in the software industry.
Well, first of all, you have one major cause of failure is when people don't want to buy the stuff you make. And that's like, you all can be absolutely amazing in what you're doing, and suddenly people don't buy it, or stop buying it, or don't buy it expensive enough. So the first 3 years of my company was actually successful. It was small. There were 2 of us who were doing bespoke development for internet applications. So we had clients, they would pay us X amount of money for X amount of days. Obviously, we would undersell at the beginning because that's what you should do, right? You should focus on client satisfaction way before you focus on getting money in the company. But the first 3-4 years were pretty successful. And then we switched to being a software company because we bought a software company. And then it's balancing, right? You balance your cost and your revenues. So from 2000, when I started, to 2008, it was slow growth. It was okay. We had rough times. I made tons of mistakes, like literally tons of mistakes. And then 2008, the financial crisis hit. And all our clients, 100% of our clients were banks, and namely private banks. So imagine in all your respective business, I don't know what your guys are doing, but imagine suddenly you're facing a market where your clients are not buying anything, like literally zero. From 2008 to 2010, we had zero revenue from sales. So thank God we had maintenance, we were selling guys, so it allows us to survive, and thank God we had a little bit of a war chest. But shit happens. And took us literally till 2014 until the private equity came in to recover.
Okay, good. Well, I want to go into private equity, but before we do that, let's go back to you saying you bought a company. What caused you, so you started out in one thing and you pivoted. What was the insight, or what was the moment that caused you to go, actually, there's an opportunity over here. I should buy this software company. Could you speak to that?
Yeah. First time was, as most things in life, was an accident. One of the employees that were working for us was previously working for this company and called us, hey, this is a good company, but it went bankrupt. So now the IP of the product and all the contract are sitting with the government. They try to fire sell it. They don't really know anything about it. And I went into looking, and it was an amazing deal. And from now on, I would say 90% of the growth of the company came from outside acquisition, and 10% was organic growth. So I always...
Just push pause there. Listen to that as a statement. 90% of the growth came from acquisition.
You'll meet in your life 2 kinds of leaders, right? You'll have the people that put everything through an Excel spreadsheet and need proof on anything. And I respect these people, and some of them are amazing entrepreneurs. It's just not who I am. It's always been interacting with other human beings. So I interviewed all the employees of this company before buying. The numbers are numbers, right? It's no rocket science. Numbers are usually pretty easy. But the people behind. So I interviewed that. At the time, the company, I think, had 15 employees. I interviewed all of them, like blank, 2 hours with each single one of them, from the receptionist to the coders to the guy sitting with the clients. I interviewed all of them. And then I went to the government who was selling the asset and said, you're going to receive lots of offers, and our offer is not going to be the highest. But I'm the one guarantee that I'm going to hire all the employees. All the employees going to rehired. And obviously, governments love that kind of thing. And we did it. So the guys were good. And then I got to talk to the clients, and the clients were good. And that's how I made my decision. Numbers are always good, right? You know that. You see stuff all the time. The numbers are always good.
I like that. Well, it's smart, right? If you think, well, when we're talking about on the buy side and the sell side, what the government, the seller wanted, which Alexis spotted, it wasn't going to be the high offer, but what could he give them that they did want? Well, they wanted continued employment.
So suddenly I'm literally actually running two companies, right? One a bespoke development company that has probably like 8-10 employees at the time, and now a software company that has 15 employees. So software company, the way it used to work, it changed a little bit now, but the way it used to work is you sell your software for a certain amount, and then the client make a contract with you and give you like 15-20% of that amount every year to maintain the product and develop it and everything. And then I'm looking, say, wait a second. On one hand, I have a low margin, non-scalable business because every time I need a guy to sell a guy, right? So it was like, and the other hand, say, oh, this software thing looks really, really good. It's like almost like pharma, right? Like once you have your initial investment, client number 5 to 10 are pretty much free money. And then you have a step, we need to hire people, but the margin were much better. So I got rid of all the bespoke part and focused on the software development. So fast forward 2014, we just recovered from the financial crisis. The company makes, I think, 12-14 million revenues, 100 employees, I think, give or take.
And what was the profit?
We would optimistically, with very good creative accounting, call it break-even. So
speak to that, because that had to be
okay.
a very stressful
speak
time.
For you guys, when you want to buy a company or when you want to sell your company, there is no such thing as a break-even company. When somebody shows you a break-even company, that means they're losing money. And if they're showing profit, they're usually making more because that means they're trying to avoid tax. If they show you break-even, that means they're losing money. There's no such thing as a break-even company. So it was creatively, it was stressful, Topher. It was like I mortgage my house. Yeah. Basically, we put all the family's money, including my mother money, in the company. Yeah, it was stressful. We were down like probably 6, 7, 8 million engulfed in the company. And
that's very shoe dog. Like Phil Knight, with Nike, you just think, God, when is it going to get easy for him? You had to have had that same kind of thing. Like, when can I breathe?
Every day. Yeah. Every day. But you know that. You all feel like that, even if your company is successful, right? It's like, there's one exercise you should never, you're an entrepreneur as well, and you too. An exercise you never can do if you're an entrepreneur is to calculate your hourly revenue, right? Right? You try that. Try calculate your hourly revenue and say, God, I wish I was a housekeeper. Yeah. Or a waiter in a restaurant. Because for all our company, starting small to medium to big, unless maybe 2 of you are going to end up with public company. But keep in mind, you make your money when you sell. Your money is the exit. Anything before that is survival. If you're lucky, your company is reach a point where you can have a decent living from a salary you get from your company. Usually it doesn't happen because all this money would be actually more efficiently invested in growing the company than paying yourself. So we all tend to stay at the minimum living conditions to grow, because growth is the actual key. And I want to talk back 2 seconds about acquisition. Probably lots of you have been through the process of trying to get money for your company. Outside money, banks, loans, friends and family. It's very hard. It's in every country in the world, in every financial institution, people don't want to loan money to company. And they're right. It's way more profitable to loan money to somebody to buy a house that has a tangible asset. And if you want to loan money to a company, then you have to evaluate it and you have to be right and the risk is huge for the bank. And they don't want to charge you with the risk because then the loan becomes unsustainable. So that's hard. Every time you want to buy a company, that has 2 characteristics. One, it has to be profitable, and 2, it has to be more profitable than your own company, or at least equally profitable, so you don't dilute your profit. But if you get these 2 criteria for an acquisition, then money becomes so easy. Like they literally, after I did my first acquisition was a very, very minimal bank loan. I think I paid literally for Logical Access, the first company I bought, I think we paid $500,000 or $600,000, and we borrowed $200,000 from that. From that point on, once a year, my banker will call me and say, "Hey, don't you want to buy something?" Seriously, yeah. And to that day, I mean, I sold everything. I'm nobody in the business world anymore. Bankers call me and say, "Hey, do you have a project? I have another 100 million this year. Don't you want to buy something?" So that's absolutely key. Getting money to grow organically your company, it's almost impossible. Getting money for an LBO, for a leverage buyout, it's easy. People want to give you money. So really, every time, I did 5 major acquisitions through the life of the company. There's one thing I'm good at. I'm good at merging teams together. That's a skill, that's a particular skill. If you have that, good. If you don't, find somebody in your company who does. Because when you acquire a company, lots of acquisitions fail because you don't have somebody who can. You have different culture, right? You've been taught a lot, you've been in business school and all that stuff. But merging culture is difficult. So that's one trick. But if you can get over that, yeah, it's the best way to go, in my opinion.
So were you approached by private equity looking to raise cash, or did they approach you, or did you approach them?
No. Sorry, I forgot the question. That's 2014. Companies break even, showing growth, major growth through acquisition, very slow organic growth, break even. Get a phone call. So when you get to a certain point, I don't know if some of you are already at that point or not yet, you get a phone call from private equity on average twice a week. Say, "I want to buy your company." They don't actually want to buy your company. They want to know what's going on. They want to be sure they're around when you do good. And for some reason, I took this phone call. The guys were French, which I thought would make it easier for me. I was wrong. But it ended up making it easier, but the beginning was a bit hard. And there were tech entrepreneurs who sold their company and started private equity with that money, so they understood my business. So it's okay, come see me. So they come to Geneva, they were from Paris. And I told them, I said, "Listen, see my company, it's break even, I'm not selling. Because now it has no value, right? Because the valuation is a percentage of your profits." They say, "Okay, let's do a little intellectual exercise. Do 2 years business plan and do it as optimistic as you can." They say, "Don't lie, don't take us for fools because we're not idiots, but give us the business plan that's your best case scenario." Okay? So I scratched my head. My brother was working with me, and we made a business plan that basically showed $2.5 million profit in 2 years. So we are in a company that's been losing money for at least 4 or 5 years right now, and we show $2.5 million profit in 2 years. Very, very optimistic. The guy saw my business plan and said, "Okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to buy your company now based on these 2 years profit. And I'm going to pay you 85% cash, and I'm going to give you 15% earnout." And with my brother, we were like, these guys are crazy. They know it's I was not even cheating them. They know it's a super optimistic business plan. Actually, they were uber smart because they knew something I didn't know at the time. And that's really one of the most important lessons, is this private equity brings tons of value. So they actually included their value in my business plan that I didn't have in my business plan, right? So they say, "Okay, he tells me he's going to make 2.5. That means probably he thinks he's going to make 1 million. But I'm going to bring them 4 million because I'm a private equity. I'm going to bring them knowledge. I'm going to bring them contacts. I'm going to bring them strategies. And that's pretty much exactly what happened. So 2 years later, the company is doing 5 million revenue. And exactly what they said, 1 million is my genius and 4 million is their input.
5 million revenue, you mean 5 million profit?
Profit. And out of this 5 million, at least 4 million is their direct input. Because they gave me a CFO, they taught me how to report. Little sidetrack. All of you run your companies, you're alone. And you take all the decision alone. You can have all the shareholders, associates. At the end of the day, you make all the decision and you don't report to anybody. And that's a big, big, big liability. Suddenly, just the fact that I had to monthly report my number to shareholder, to a boss, de facto, like to a board, but a real board. I had board there. We can put friends on a board, but it's not a real board. A real board can fire you, right? This guy could fire me any day if I didn't deliver. So that gave me focus, that gave me knowledge, and that's exactly what happened. So in 2017, I went to see them and say, okay, now the company is making 21, 22 million, 5 million profit, 25% margin, extremely low growth, right? Because at the time we're doing front office software for private banks. It's super sticky. It's really hard to lose a client, but it's hard to make a new client because it's massive project for the banks and you have competition. And at the time we are, I don't know, like maybe a 250 employee companies, and we're fighting against giants. All the banking software, the private banking software are in Switzerland, and they're all way bigger than we are, like massively bigger. Our main competitor is a company called Temenos, who's on the Swiss stock exchange, whose market value is 5 billion. And that's my competitor. So it's hard to sell it's hard to beat them on a RFP. It's hard to sell a new client. I would sometime because we were more agile and we could do stuff they couldn't do. But at the end of the day, every time they sell, I send one, they sell 10. So it's hard to grow. And I went to see my shareholder and said, there's this company, that's a back office. So if we get to buy that, we have the full suite from back to front, and we can be the only supplier for a bank in theory if we get that stuff. And they say, go for it. And the company was doing 25 when we were doing 22, and we bought it because they have unlimited cash. Also, we bought it for peanuts because we were lucky.
You say you bought it for peanuts because you were lucky, but what was the context? Why did the seller sell you that so cheap?
Yeah, I said lucky, I meant smart, actually. But I wanted to sound humble. This one, I've been lucky a lot, lots of time. But this one, that was smart because this software was owned by a massive American company, like $1 billion company. And this little teeny tiny banking software in Switzerland were doing 25 million. So they basically didn't even know they had it. It's like, that's it. And I actually called them and say, hey, you have a software in Switzerland that we would like to buy. And they say, what's Switzerland? So literally, I remember a conversation with the guy say, listen, there's something really shady in that deal because you book in Swiss francs, but you're in Europe. Why aren't you booking in euro? So, well, we have our own country, our own currency. So I called them, and they were really not really interested to talk. And then I sent them a couple of articles about leaks in banking software. And I said, you realize that for a 25 million revenue out of your billions of revenue, you're running a very high reputation risk. And they say, okay, where do we sign? And that actually was the reason we bought, and we bought it super cheap because they were worried of there was like Panama Papers and all that kind of leaks and stuff that would actually have, it was a bit exaggerated because with the software, the risk was really low, but still it was a reputational risk. So we actually present that as we're going to help you get rid of a reputational risk. So, and then I had when a PE calls a bank and say, I think this deal they needed to borrow, I don't remember the exact number, but I think they had to add 6 in cash and borrow 30 or something like that. It's how cheap it was. So when I call a bank and want to borrow 30 million, it takes a minute. When they call a bank and want to borrow 30 million, we actually, we had Credit Suisse. You heard about Credit Suisse probably recently. Credit Suisse and UBS actually competing on the loan. We had both term sheet, and we were having called UBS and say, because I was a Credit Suisse client, but now it doesn't matter so much. And they were UBS clients, so I've called the Credit Suisse and say, hey, my shareholders want to sign with UBS because like you're 10 base points more expensive. Can you do something? And they're actually competing to lend them the money. That's the kind of situation you are when you're in a private equity.
So the private equity came on board, right? So Alexis sold part of the company and then was able to scale radically. What happened with the other 15%?
Well, they made the mistake, and we had lots of laugh with them about that, is they calculated the earn-out, not like, okay, if you reach 2.5 million, you get 15%. If you reach 1 million, you get 7%. They calculate it as a ratio of the profit, and as the profit was at 5 at that point, I ended up making more with the 15% than with the previous 85%.
I love it. I mean, actually, first of all, that deserves a round of applause by itself.
No, that's okay. This one I was telling. This one was pure luck, and
in which case, let's acknowledge his luck.
and actually told them when the guy he came in, he said, "Fuck," you said I'm allowed to swear. He said, "Fuck, I wish I capped the the earnout." I say, "Yeah, but you cannot blame me for playing better than you in a game where you set the rules." And he said, "Yeah." They were very happy though, because at the end of the day, they made more money. I made lots of more money than I thought, but so did they. So everybody was happy on this one.
So what next? So what now? So you've had this incredible entrepreneurial journey. You've had an extremely lucrative payday. What's next for you?
So the end of the adventure for me, right? In this company we bought called Apsis, that pretty much doubled the size of the company, happens to have a guy in there who was the CEO of the company that we hired as the head of sales. So I was the CEO and he was the head of sales. He was 10 years older than me. He had all the contacts and he was way, way, way smarter than me and more qualified than me. This was no question. Like, I was good, he was great. And so I went to see the private equity and said, this guy has to be the CEO. It makes no sense that I'm actually running this guy. He's much better than I am. And they said, okay, I've been chairman for 2 years. And then in 2019, I told them, listen, I want out. I know you're going to sell this company soon, but I had 20 years now in this company, at the head of this company. Said, listen, make me a good offer. Had 15% left, and they made me an incredibly good offer. Like, God bless them. They didn't have to. They went overboard, and I sold the remaining 15% of the company. So since 2019, 2020, I'm retired. So I've been retired for 2 years. I'm 53 now. So my goal was always to retire at 50, and I retired at 50 and 2 months. So that was not bad. I was 2 months late. I've been retired, and Topher actually, among other people, made me realize that I did this executive MBA in Oxford, which we can discuss the quality of the teaching, but that's for another time. But then I met like lots of entrepreneurs, like young entrepreneurs in this thing, because or wannabe entrepreneurs, or people who are not really happy where they are and they want to become entrepreneurs. And I was like, if I can only like just help them avoid the mistake I made. I have this sentence. It said, if I started New Access with the knowledge I have now, with the experience I have now, I would have sold 5 years earlier and 50 million more. So that's the value of the experience I acquire. I think it's 50 million. And I say, if I can help any of these guys, and that's why I went into this. So first, I wanted to be a coach, and doesn't work, because when you're a coach, you're not allowed to give your opinion, right? And my time without being able to give my opinion on any topic is around 45 seconds, right? So that's sitting with something and somebody taking him by the hand, and he said, what do you think? And I'll go, well, you do that, and that, and your problem is solved. But that's not what a coach does. So I'm now mentor, which is not a great name, or special advisor to the CEO. I work only with CEOs. I do not work with anybody else in the company. I work either directly with the CEO, which is my preference in pre-private equity, but as I have a lot of contact with private equity, I know them all, I also get hired with private equity. Private equity have a problem, always, pretty much almost always, is they don't want to change management. they hate changing management because it's a risk and they hate risk. All their business is based on risk, so adding a level of risk is not good for them. But very often they have CEOs that are like just not good enough, but not bad enough to be changed. So I step in and I help, and that's usually short mandates. And like I help the CEO. I pretty much sit and say, "Hey, I'm like, don't think me as a guy from the PE. I'm the guy who's gonna help you not get fired by the PE." But that's my least favorite thing to do because I value relationship, and it's much easier when the CEO hires me than when it's the PE who hires me.
Would you all please give him a wonderful round of applause?